This is Gators Breakdown, episode 19. And yes, it's finally here. Will Muschamp is coming back to the swamp. But before we dive into that, like I mentioned, this is Gators Breakdown. You can find us on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, and now on TuneIn Radio. Many options there for you to get your Gators Breakdown podcast. I'm David Waters, your host, joined by Joey V. And taking us into enemy territory, we have Will Gunter bringing us the South Carolina side of things. But before we go into that, of course, some big news lately with the quarterback situation at Florida. Mostly everybody thought Luke Del Rio probably wasn't going to be the quarterback or didn't want him to be the quarterback going into the South Carolina game. Jim McElwain has his press conference. Luke Del Rio is injured. You can believe that if you want from going around, if you look at social media, a lot of people don't necessarily believe that may be the case there. And Austin Appleby will get the starter reps, and the true freshman will get Kyle Trask, and Felipe Franks will get secondary reps as well. So, Joey, what did you take from McElwain's press conference right before we get into Will in South Carolina?
I want to know how bad of an injury this would be if Del Rio played good on Saturday. I don't doubt he was injured. I think he was. I saw him nursing that shoulder the game. But I want to know just, the out indefinitely. Think necessarily that would have been the words used if Del Rio had been a world beater on Saturday.
Agree there. And we will definitely dive into this quarterback situation and all the injuries Florida has mounting up with South Carolina coming to town. But with South Carolina coming to town, a good friend and colleague, Will Gunter. We've done some stuff on SEC Breakdown and with Mark Rogers, a colleague of ours in the past. So, Will, I'm glad you could join us here on Gators Breakdown to look at this trip from the Gamecocks to Gainesville.
Yeah, it's a big change from about 5 weeks ago here in Columbia with a team or a program that was just trying to get through the rest of the season, maybe get ready for 2017, to a team now who's maybe thinking a little bit more and trying to figure out which bowl destination they would like to go. And nobody really ever wants to go spend the end of the year in Birmingham. So if Shreveport or Memphis is available, a lot of people a little bit more interested there than going to Birmingham.
Hey, you never know. They could be here in Jacksonville if things fall the right way. So, Will, of course, the big story, Will Muschamp coming back to Gainesville where he coached and was fired 2 seasons ago. Jim McElwain come in to take over for him. Since there has been a turnaround of sorts lately, what's been the general consensus from the fans and from the media of what Will Muschamp has accomplished so far?
Well, a lot of it is getting healthy. This was a team that Deebo Samuel, the wide receiver who had 9 catches for 125 yards and a touchdown on Saturday, was out with hamstring injuries for the early part of the season and was not able to play a part in the offense. Rico Dowdle, the running back, who is now gone for back-to-back 100-yard games, had 127 yards against Tennessee and 149 on Saturday against Missouri. He looks like a guy that you can build the offense around. And then the guy that everybody's going to talk about is Jake Bentley coming in and making 3 starts at home and showing poise and accuracy and a little bit of grittiness there to run the quarterback position, something South Carolina fans maybe haven't even seen since Connor Shaw, as good as Dylan Thompson was, maybe since Connor Shaw. So a lot of people just ecstatic to see improvement in the first year. Under Will Muschamp, we thought the defense would get better as the season went on. We knew injuries would be something that they would have to avoid. They've been able to do that. You talk about the Gators right now, and I was listening to Jim McElwain's press conference today. Obviously, it's the end of the season. Teams get beat up. South Carolina could not afford to do that. And at least to this point, at least going into Saturday, they've stayed healthy. We'll see if they're still healthy after Saturday. But that's been a big reason the defense has continued to progress game in, game out. And a lot of people here in Columbia right now are ecstatic with the Will Muschamp hire, especially given that if Georgia had not fired Mark Richt and swooped in and taken Kirby Smart away, Kirby Smart would be the head coach in Columbia right now, not Will Muschamp. And people look at what's going on with Kirby over at Georgia, and they feel like they've hit a home run landing Will Muschamp.
Yeah, so, definitely things have turned around for the best, and a definitely big win, program stepping win for Will Muschamp at South Carolina. of course 2 weeks ago against Tennessee. Will, is it really just as easy and as simple as Bentley getting the start of why this offense has turned around?
No, it's the guys that I talked about there with Dowdle and Deebo Samuel in particular. Brian Edwards, the other freshman wide receiver, has been healthy throughout most of the season and has been a part of the offense. But South Carolina does not have players like Deebo Samuel right now. That was the reason in recruiting, and I know he got injured for you guys, but Dre Massey, who was from the upstate of South Carolina, was such a big target when Will Muschamp arrived because they missed those fleet of foot guys that can get out there and make a play in space. South Carolina's got some bigger, taller receivers, but Deebo Samuel has come on and been very, very good and compares favorably to current San Francisco 49er Bruce Ellington, and that he's kind of a stocky kid. He's a little on the shorter side, closer to 5'9", 5'10", but he can run. He's got great football speed. And in the last few weeks when he's healthy, because he's had some hamstring injuries that date back to his high school days, that he's had trouble being on the field and being a part of the offense. And he wasn't there for the Kentucky game. He wasn't there for some of the other games, the Texas A&M game. Not that he would have made a difference in that one, but certainly the Kentucky game is the one that I think a lot of people look back at. Had if he been healthy, maybe things would have been a little bit different. And then, as I mentioned, Rico Dowdle, finding a confident running back that can carry the offense a little bit, back-to-back weeks of 27 carries. That's a massive difference. Doesn't matter who your quarterback is, being able to run the ball effectively helps a lot.
Hey, Will, quick question for you. Muschamp was heavily criticized, obviously, for his offensive lack of offensive production at Florida. Goes ahead and hires Kurt Roper again for the second time. Do you think Roper is actually the answer to South Carolina's offensive issues? Do you think he's done a good job, or do you just think it's the talent that maybe was already there from Coach Steve Spurrier? Because we saw Brandon McElwain, who was a big recruit for Will Muschamp this past season. He's kind of he's flamed out, never really lived up to the bill. People didn't know whether he was going to take, football seriously. I heard he's a pretty good baseball player. What do you make of this offense? Is it more so maybe what the head ball coach left over, or is it Kurt Roper?
No, it's Kurt Roper, and there's still a long way to go. You boys will see it on Saturday. The offensive line is very, very unathletic, and that's something that's got to change. They're not a lot, and when I say unathletic, what Kurt Roper likes to do is those jet sweeps. You have to have guards that can get out and move, and they've done a poor job recruiting there. But, man, you look at it, your quarterback is a freshman. Your top running back is a freshman. Your backup running back is a redshirt freshman. Your top receiver is a sophomore that only played in 5 games last year. Your second receiver is a true freshman in Brian Edwards. Kurt Roper is kind of handcuffed still right now, and I think that upsets people a little bit as he tries to integrate Jake Bentley into the offense. But you look at it, Bentley's completing right around 70% of his passes, and if you take away the passes that have either been dropped or the passes he simply rolled out the pocket and throw away, it'd actually be closer to 85 or 90%. I think Kurt Roper is a great, in the time I've spoke with him, a great offensive mind. I think the biggest thing, we talk about Will Muschamp learning on the job, and I know he's publicly said if he had to do it over again, they would have gone with Will Greer instead of Treon Harris. And you saw that happen this year. You had Brandon McElwain, who was probably a little bit better passer than Treon Harris, and then you had the guy like Will Greer and Jake Bentley. And he didn't wait around for that situation to unfold. He didn't take time. It was 6 games in. There was a lot of talk up here about whether or not he should be pulling the red shirt off of Jake Bentley or sticking with McElwain. Quite frankly, I think sometimes we expect freshmen to come in, especially in this state more than anywhere else, because of what Deshaun Watson's done. People think that freshmen can come in and just, boom, instantly be this big-time stud quarterback. Look at how Jacob Eason's struggling. Brandon McElwain should have redshirted. They just didn't have that luxury, and because he passed up about $2 million to come play football and not play baseball, you kind of had to throw him out there and see what would happen. So McElwain, like a lot of freshman quarterbacks, really should have redshirted. Jake Bentley's just kind of one of those rare kids and is playing really well so far through the first 3 games.
One more, Will, before I get you back to David. South Carolina's defense, obviously not where they need to be. Muschamp's going to fix that. It's kind of a patchwork, bright spots, and I do see some kind of foundation for that. And I could honestly see South Carolina becoming one of the best defenses in the Southeastern Conference in the next couple of years. The question is, going to be able to recruit offensive talent to South Carolina. We know that South Carolina's had recruiting struggles over the years, just kind of because they're competing with Clemson and Georgia, and now North Carolina is getting a lot better. They've kind of stuck like between a rock and a hard place. What do you see offensively for South Carolina's recruiting over the next year or two?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it so far, or Trace. I mean, obviously you got the quarterbacks that he's already brought in with Bentley and with McElwain, and that situation will work itself out. Brian Edwards was an elite level recruit. He does have a transfer that's sitting out this year, Tyson Williams, who was a big time recruit who went to North Carolina and played as a freshman, will be on the roster next year and will form a very good 1-2 punch with Rico Dowdle. And then next year you have Ortre Smith, a 4-star big-time wide receiver out of Fort Dorchester, and Shi Smith, another young, talented wide receiver, 4-star guy who picked South Carolina over Oklahoma, already coming in. I'll tell you this, the problem with South Carolina's recruiting has not been facilities, and it's not been North Carolina or Clemson or Georgia. It's been effort. It sounds stupid. We don't have enough time on this particular show to break down some of the stories I can give y'all that we heard at the end of the Steve Spurrier era. Look, South Carolina wasn't getting Nick Chubb. Let me make that perfectly clear. But if you've heard the Nick Chubb story about the head coach not being on campus twice when Nick Chubb came to visit, you get a sense for what was going on. Again, Steve Spurrier could have been there. They weren't getting Nick Chubb. Let's be clear about that. But again, there's a level of things you have to do. And you guys know Will Muschamp's one of the best in this business at building relationships. You're right. You look at the defensive guys he's got coming on campus already. That defense is going to be vastly improved next year. Really, really good in 2017. But don't sell this offensive recruiting short. It got awkward there at Florida, certainly, and the narrative got built against him. And I think a lot of that was because of his initial hire in Charlie Weiss. And that was just bad. I mean, that was a bad, bad hire. And again, you're talking about a guy who I think learned from that. They're in position to get another top 200 recruit in the 2018 class at the quarterback position. I think he's the number 6 dual threat kid, into Kerryon Joyner out of South Carolina. Zamir White, the number 1 running back in the country for 2018. South Carolina's in his top 4. They're going to be okay. It's a matter to me. The question is keeping the staff intact. That's going to be Lance Thompson doesn't buy or rent a house anywhere. He basically sleeps on people's couches and then moves out the next year. That guy has not stayed anywhere more than 3 years, and they need to keep him. Brian McClendon, you feel like he might be looking for the next big job. There's some things like that I think are bigger detriments to Will Muschamp, keeping his staff intact for a few years to build a nucleus of talent, because it's a really good recruiting staff.
Yeah, well, that was a big bugaboo for him at Florida, was the assistants, in and out the door, especially a wide receiver coach. Could never really get a wide receiver coach at Florida, quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator, of course, as well. So, yeah, that was a big problem for Muschamp at Florida as well. Will, one more thing about the defense before we let you go heading to this year. 52nd nationally, not too terrible. But, I mean, when I watch South Carolina, it's very opportunistic defense, red zone defense, 8th in the nation and 12th in the nation in interceptions, with 9 total on the year. What's been the elements Muschamp has brought that you've seen that has kind of, not necessarily, made this South Carolina defense one to fear, but one that has, can take advantage of opportunities?
Well, for number one, it's a talented secondary. There's zero depth. I mean, there's absolutely zero depth. But Chris Lamons was committed to Will Muschamp at Florida, and they kind of dropped him to take Jalen Tabor, which, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, Jamarcus King was the number 1 defensive back in the country coming out of junior college last year and has been very talented. Rashad Fenton out of Miami was a young man that had an interception last week. That was kind of a great find by the previous staff. So I think he inherited a pretty talented group, but they've just been aggressive and physical. And that's something that really South Carolina has not played with the last few years. And then I think you're seeing the impact of Travaris Robinson. I mean, this young man, what he did at Florida with that defensive secondary, the way he coaches, the fundamentals, the mindset that he brings, and the way he's able to impact a secondary along with Will Muschamp has changed that. And look, let's be honest. Drew Lock's an average quarterback. He can throw the ball a mile, but he's an average quarterback. Josh Dobbs is an average quarterback. Andrew Ford for UMass is what we'll call him average. South Carolina hasn't played a lot of great quarterbacks. That was something I said going into the year. Hey, you look down that schedule, they get Deshaun Watson at the end, and maybe Josh Dobbs was the second best quarterback they were going to face. You taking advantage of some quarterbacks that still have a ways to go. Jacob Eason was 5 of 17. We aren't talking about an all-star list of quarterbacks the Gamecocks have faced. And so I think that's helped them tremendously being able to take advantage of a couple situations there.
That is Will Gunter, folks, co-host of the all-new early game at 107.5 The Game in Columbia, South Carolina. Will, I don't think anybody can break South Carolina down as good as you, so I'm glad you could join us, man.
Thanks,
man,
Will.
Always glad to do it. I was down there in 2006 when Spurrier came back to the Swamp for the first time, and I was about the second loudest stadium.
Block kick. You saw that? Jarvis Moss?
That was sickening, boys. That was 2004 was worse than that. When Holtz brought that last team in, and we stayed at that Night's Inn right down. They cut the water off on Sunday. They were ready for to get out of there. So rough trip. I've had a couple trips down to Gainesville. It's always fun, but it'll be interesting to see the reception Muschamp gets when he comes back into Gainesville on Saturday afternoon, noon game.
It'll be booze.
I got a funny story about that 06 game. I was working for Comcast at the time when Comcast used to carry SEC games. So I was a cameraman on the sideline for that game. And when the field goal is about to be kicked, and I got a camera right in Steve Spurrier's face. So, and all he could do was, after it was blocked, give that old Steve Spurrier oh shucks grin. So, it is what it was at that point. But you're right, that at that block, that was one of the loudest moments ever in the Swamp there.
That was insane. There's been some good. Obviously, the Gamecocks have had a lot of success all of a sudden down there over the last few years. I was there when Lattimore had his big game, and kind of, to me, kind of the end of the Meyer era. That particular
homecoming for you.
That was a rough night, and I thought that kind of ended. And then I tell you what, I've never seen a stranger game. And I saw South Carolina lose to Tennessee up 14 with a minute and a half, but blocking a field goal and blocking a punt that ended Muschamp's tenure at Florida was pretty weird. So there's been some interesting games down there.
It's ironic. Don't you think it's ironic that South Carolina got Muschamp fired, and then they kind of threw him a solid? Ray Tanner threw him a solid and hired him.
And there was, I tell you what though, I mean, you guys, it's different because again, what South Carolina has been, the recruiting was so bad, and people here are watching Clemson and Dabo Swinney and what they were doing and how they were doing on the recruiting trail. And I was the first one. I kind of brag on this, not that I called Muschamp being hired, but last year, the day after Thanksgiving, when the report came out, Tom Herman basically said, "I'm not going there. I don't want anything to do with that program. It's not me." I said, "Guys, the person who needs to be hired in this situation is Will Muschamp." One, because listen, I know what happened down at Florida, 11-1 and 4-8. All right, and then you had 2 very average seasons. But that was fixable. And I'll tell you this, too. The MO at Florida is if you're going to play in Florida and you're going to win, and Jim McElwain's experiencing this right now, because you boys know this better than I do. What's McElwain right now? He's 17-5 as a coach. Am I right about that? Is that right?
Yeah.
I was on some of the message boards today, and people want to fire because of the offense. Because the offense is not successful. Y'all went to the East last year, or you won the East last year. You're in position to win the East again. But if Florida doesn't win by putting up a lot of points because of what Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer did, Florida fans don't want that. They want a lot of points. South Carolina fans, hey, you win however it happens. Run the ball 50 times with Marcus Lattimore and win 10-7, and people here build statues of you. So Will Muschamp is a much better fit at South Carolina than he would have been at Florida. Now, whether Jim McElwain is the offensive mastermind that Florida fans want to embrace, or whether it's going up the road and trying to get Larry Fedora to come down there and run his offense, very interesting concept there. But Muschamp at Florida was a bad fit. At South Carolina, he's a great fit for how those programs are run and what they like to do.
Will, man, thanks so much. You had a little bit of you had a little bit of foreshadowing there. All that stuff we're about to talk about right here. So
enjoy it, man. You guys take care and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Will. Yep. So we mentioned thanks, Will, for joining us here. South Carolina comes to the Swamp, noon game to take on the Gators. Joey, so I know
Will already fired McElwain.
Yeah.
McElwain.
So we're looking at, of course, he, like I said, he did a little bit of foreshadowing there. Of course, Joey, we've seen it all over social media. Fans are not happy. Some will defend McElwain. Some are absolutely already done. just a little over a season and a half into McElwain's tenure, all because of the offense. What's your quick take from what you saw, last week and what we've been discussing the last couple of days in the social media world?
I mean, I think the offense has reached an all-new low on Saturday. I think that was probably the worst offensive performance I've seen from Florida since the Tennessee game in 2014, when we won 10-9. Is that the final score?
Yeah, there.
When Driscoll got benched for Treon Harris because he was so bad.
You can still throw that Missouri. You can still throw that Missouri game in there from a couple years ago.
that Missouri game was weird though.
It was.
Missouri
You're right.
Didn't even play that good.
Yep.
I mean, they had a few good breaks. I'm not even going to throw that Missouri game. I'm just talking about just terrible offensive performance. I think that Tennessee game, especially the first half with Driscoll, was Luke Del Rio-esque. Of this past week. And McElwain never made the switch, and he even admitted today that he wanted to, and he didn't. Going back to the Del Rio injury, do you think that he's as injured as they made it sound today?
Like you, I did notice the hanging of the arm going into halftime, and then, but no, I kind of agree. If he had played well, it doesn't. I mean, let's put it this way: if you're playing good, you play through an injury. Now I know McElwain says he couldn't carry his duffel bag or whatever, but I mean, I know it's two different injuries altogether. But we saw what Jerry Davis was doing and how the heart of one of the best Florida players on the team. If he's playing better, we're not in the situation we're talking about right now.
Exactly, bingo. Do I think he was injured? Yeah, there's the players this late in the season all play injured. All of them do. November, 75% of the team's playing injured right now. You just deal with it. So do I think that Del Rio plays on Saturday if he had a good game and Florida wins on Saturday? Yeah, I think he does play on Saturday. I think this kind of gave McElwain a pass to kind of move on from the Del Rio era. Done. I mean, I really do, which actually is kind of promising because that shows me that he wasn't kind of stuck on starting Luke Del Rio like Muschamp was with Driscoll. It took Muschamp a long time to break away from Jeff Driscoll. So that's one thing that I really hope that kind of has, differs, is that it seems like he's cutting the cord now. And if a freshman does come in and play well the rest of the season, I do think that Del Rio is probably done as a starting quarterback at the University of Florida. I actually think there's probably a 50-50 chance that he's done, period, anyway, no matter who plays on Saturday or who starts. I think the coaches have had enough. He seems like a very nice kid. I like his dad a lot. He's very smart. He's a scholar athlete. Against him, we don't want to throw any shade his way, as personally, but he's limited talent-wise. He's just a limited player, and in the Southeastern Conference, a limited player at the most important position on the field. And Luke Del Rio's ceiling is so low. I just think you got to move on. You do, Dave. We've talked about this in the past. Del Rio's kind of skated by the last couple weeks with great defensive play. I mean, he stunk against Missouri. Let's just put it out there. Defense wasn't so bad, and Florida's defense wasn't so good that game. I mean, Florida would have lost. I mean, but he was terrible in that game. What, 3 interceptions?
Yep. Should have been 5.
And it should have been 5. You're right. And, played horrible. We were there for the Georgia game. We were there.
Yep.
Pass that he threw to Georgia's defense, and it was intercepted, was the worst pass I think I've ever seen him throw.
Yeah.
First pass of the game.
Yeah.
So I just, it's just a trend. It's not like he's getting benched, for one bad game or so, and he's been going in the wrong direction. Listening to Mike Huguenin today, saying on the radio that, Luke Del Rio has regressed since his injury, and he has. I don't know if he's playing scared now. I don't know if he's more hurt than we thought he was. I don't know if it's mental thing. I don't know what the deal is with him, but he's gun shy. He's making bad decisions, which was the key to him starting this year, was that he doesn't make bad decisions now. So should I say the benefit of his game and what's positive about him is no longer there. So there's no point in having him start for your team.
There you go. You read my mind. You said you don't – of course he got hurt, and you don't know if he's playing – don't get me wrong. He's probably not 100%. I still don't think that's an excuse for what we're seeing, like you mentioned, the decision-making. I don't know how much of it goes into that, especially when he's in the pocket now. He's rolling into the pressure. He's just trying to escape the pocket when there's not pressure there, puts himself in more trouble. But what I think is, we say, he might be playing hurt or he could be – I think another thing is teams eventually just got more film on him, and they saw the limitations that the coaching staff had to put on this offense because of what he can do. He's not consistent throwing the ball down the field, so that half of his play is already downgraded. And then now, once he starts playing bad and starts making bad decisions, the whole offense is taking a toll. I mean, we've seen it time and time again, year after year, with this Florida offense. Teams stack the box and dare the quarterback to beat them. And Arkansas did it. Granted, I know a lot of people want to slam on this Florida run game for not being able to, of course, Auburn ran for over 500 yards on this Arkansas defense, but that's totally, completely different offense with tempo. But of course, I think we've screamed for it. Other people have screamed for it. This Florida offense, no matter who they went tempo, they got a little bit going. But that's neither here nor there. It starts and ends with the quarterback. So it's tiring for Gator fans.
That game was winnable. That game was winnable on Saturday, Dave. Yeah. Del Rio missed about 3 or 4 wide open touchdowns. If he hits Callaway in stride instead of arm punting it to the safety, I mean, it is. His defender on the post route throws it about 6 yards short.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ugly situation. We've seen it, time and time again from this Gator offense. But now, it begs the question, Joey. We know, I think we can pretty much, get away from the whole Del Rio thing. He's not playing. So the big question is, and we even started it before today, what does Florida do at quarterback from here on out? You have Austin Appleby, who started 2 games, both on the road at Tennessee, where if you go back and look at that first half, it's probably, the best this offense has looked all season. We showed creativity from the coaching staff. Austin Appleby hit some throws down the field. And then, of course, second half of that game, and then the very next week against Vanderbilt, it was completely a wash, nothing going on the offense. 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out at Tennessee, and just could get nothing going versus Vanderbilt, which we know is a pretty good defense. Vanderbilt, plays even this past week, played Auburn very tough with that defense. So, that can be excusable a little bit. That's why, Appleby, to me, if he plays this week, not a terrible choice. But the biggest question, do you burn one of the red shirts from Felipe Franks or Kyle Trask? And I'll give my little scenario here, and Joey, we'll go to you because I know we may differ on this a little bit, but I don't think too much. If you hope when you get a big-time quarterback in Felipe Franks, if in what you're hoping you get from that quarterback, you hope he's here only 3 seasons. What does that mean? Because that means he's playing good. That means he's playing great. So if that's what I'm not saying that's what you're going to get out of him, but if that is what you get out of him and that's what you hope to get out of him, that means if he redshirts this year, you only get 2 seasons with him. So this scenario right now presents itself to go ahead, burn his red shirt, get some, or Kyle Trask, either one of these guys, burn their red shirt, get some experience with him this year, and build on it for next year. Because you know what? There is no warm-up game next year. You're in Dallas versus Michigan, game 1. It's not the usual cupcake game 1 that Florida's going to have. So you know what? The scenario that is presenting itself, I have no problem either way. If you want to go Appleby and try and save the red shirts, but if you want to burn one of the red shirts and get these guys some experience, more than likely because you hope they're only here for 3 years, So now you only really got 2.5 seasons with him for right now. They have 4 games left this year. Go ahead and play him. Get some experience with him. Maybe, and Joey, I know like you said, maybe it lights a spark in this offense.
Going back to Appleby real quick, what I think I threw the towel in on him when he goal line fumbled.
Yeah.
Because that was an easy touchdown. It should have been. You turn the ball over, and that was just embarrassing. So that I understand that Vanderbilt defense is really good, but I kind of threw the towel in on Appleby and kind of gave up on his talents, or should I say lack thereof, with that goal line fumble. And even McElwain admitted in the post-game press conference, you can't do that, okay? Under center, you cannot fumble a goal line snap. Appleby, and I tweeted this earlier, Appleby to me is just like going back to Del Rio as a starter. He's basically a 1A. Luke Del Rio's 1 and Appleby's 1A. Appleby has a little better mobility. We discussed that before the Tennessee game. Run around a little bit. He's got a better arm. He's going to throw the deep ball better, but his decision-making stinks. This is a guy that made a career of throwing almost as many touchdowns as interceptions at Purdue. And granted, we talked about how, he was coming from behind and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But he turns the ball over. He does. Away with a few throws that probably could have been intercepted against Tennessee and Vanderbilt, actually. So, going back to Appleby, I think is a mistake on that. I understand if you go back to Appleby because you're trying to salvage the season. But to me, I think you have to burn this season apart. I mean, the season's over. You have 2 losses. The SEC East is terrible. Not make it to Atlanta. I mean, you got to go to LSU in 2 weeks, and Tennessee's lurking out there. And, you already made a bowl game. I really think that you have to play. You're not going to beat Alabama in the SEC championship. I mean, even if you play your best game of the year, you're still not going to beat them. First of all, the referees are not going to allow you to beat them because they're not going to allow – no, seriously, they're not going to allow Eastern Conference's only hope to get in the playoff to lose to a 3-2-3 loss team. So you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt of any of the calls in Atlanta. Personally, I think the last 3 or 4 games have to be a preparation for next year on the roster next year. So I think that you need to go with whatever freshman you think is going to be your starting quarterback in the future, or Felipe Franks, because you got Jake Allen coming in next year, and somebody's going to transfer. Allen come in, Felipe Franks and Kyle Trask all on the roster, only a year apart from each other. You're not going to do that. Jake Allen, and you got a 4-star in Felipe Franks. One of those guys are transferring. I'm sorry, you're not going to have 2 4-stars on your roster. This is 2016, almost 2017. We saw what happened with Blake Barnett, with a mentality and an ego, that they need to be the guy. So I think that right now, and I tweeted this as well earlier, I think this is a make or break decision for Jim McElwain, Florida. I think this week, he needs to really start to think about next season. You said Michigan right off the bat in Dallas. Michigan might win the national championship this year, Dave. I mean, they might be the reigning defending national champions this year when we play them in late August 30th or whatever it is. So you really, truly have to start thinking about next year and getting a guy ready. And Felipe Franks are your only choices coming into this game. I think South Carolina is a good start for them. I think it's a defense that they can kind of take advantage of. Like, Will just told us, they've kind of had the benefit of the doubt of playing bad quarterbacks this year. That, this is a game kind of, you get an SEC atmosphere, but yet you don't really get an SEC defense yet, So I think this is a game ripe for a freshman to start, because then you got to go to Death Valley. But, and I tweeted this the other day, and I think you liked it. Chris League beat the number 6 LSU Tigers in just his 4th start in 2003. I remember that season.
Nick Saban against LSU that year.
Yep. Engel Martin went out with a concussion and never saw the field again and transferred. So, I think this could be an opportunity for a freshman to stand up. And I really hope that McElwain makes the right decision and goes with we saw Ahmad Fullwood was quoted today as saying that Felipe Franks is a better quarterback right now.
Yep.
touch on the ball. He's been the most improved since camp. Obviously, we saw him in spring game struggle a little bit, but
Right.
God, he just turned 18 years old. You know, he should have been in high school still back in the spring game. You know, and he's 6'6". I mean, he's looked like he's put on some weight already. You know, seeing recent, you know, him being on the sidelines and stuff. So I actually in my heart would really like to see Felipe Franks get a shot. You know, he fan committed to LSU. McElwain and Nussmeier got him to flip, and I really want to see what he's got. I know Trask is a popular guy, you know, with the fan base and stuff like that, but backup quarterback at his high school for a reason. You know, he didn't even start. We know the scheme was a little different. Derek King started ahead of him, who ended up in Houston. But, you know, he still was a backup quarterback. You know, Doug Nussmeier kind of prides himself in finding, you know, hidden gems. And he was only a 2- and 3-star, you know, rated by some, you know, recruiting sites. See Frank start on Saturday. I think he's your future. I think you got to see what you have in him. You know, forget the red shirt. I understand what you're saying about, you know, possibly only having him for 2 more years. And, you know, at this point in Florida football, do you really have a luxury of kind of saying, oh, well, we want to save, you know, a year?
Right.
I think McElwain's at the point now where we were just talking about with Will already fired him. You got to win with offense now, you know, and I think that he's desperate to win with a quarterback that he can hang his hat on, because the last quarterback that we had walked out that door and he went to West Virginia.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it all comes back, you know, and I go back to, you know, the kind of the fan focus of Jim McElwain. You know, some would offend him because he wins more than he loses. And I tweeted this yesterday. But he was brought here to fix the offense, and it's not fixed. I'm not saying fire him. I'm not saying don't give him a chance. He deserves a chance. He's still, you know, I agree. Most of these aren't his guys, but his biggest playmakers right now are
Year 3
guys. Yep.
Year 3.
Exactly.
Year 3 for a coach is the year where a coach is supposed to have his best improvement.
Yep. I mean, next year is his year. He's going to have his quarterback. Now, granted, Luke Del Rio was his quarterback too, but I'll defend him a little bit. It was a tough situation. You had 2 true freshmen, and you had to go out and get something after Will Greer because, you believe me, you weren't giving Treon Harris another chance. So, you know, it was a little bit of a weird situation. Yes, Luke Del Rio was his choice. Yes, Austin Appleby is his choice. Yes, the 2 true freshmen are his choice. But, you know, you can't blame him for, you know, having one of the best defenses in the league, thinking he had something in the grad transfer and maybe, you know, lucking out as the season went on. But I still don't think you can defend the way this offense looks in a season and a half. There's been no improvement 2 seasons in a row now where the offense has looked worse as the season has went on. And, you know, as, you know, somebody who's supposed to be an offensive genius and an offensive guru, you know, that's inexcusable to me. So I get it. There are certain the offensive line, young guys on the offensive line. I know it's terrible. If Florida wants to sit here and say a lack of, some people want to say a lack of playmakers, I don't believe so. To me, you get the right quarterback in, I think you start seeing playmakers. And I know the comparison: Jim McElwain, Jim Harbaugh. It's that they started at the same time. One went to Michigan, one went to Florida. Both big programs. And I know people said, oh, Michigan was in a much better situation with their roster, senior-laden talent. But you know what? People wasn't calling that talent when Brady Hoke was there.
One's a better recruiter than the other. One's a better recruiter.
There you go. Yep, one is a better recruiter and has already shown. And, you know, he's had 2 different quarterbacks in 2 different seasons up there in Michigan. And then people also want to throw out to me, oh, they got an easier schedule. Sorry, not this year. SEC East is terrible. And granted, Jim McElwain has beat the East teams except for Tennessee. And this past week was, to me, the first time he
struggled to make a bowl game in the Big Ten. Let's just be honest; they would struggle to make a bowl game in the Big Ten. And it irks me and it makes my stomach sick to say that, because I don't hold the Big Ten with high regard. ACC East, and I tweeted this out too yesterday, is turned into the Coastal Division of the ACC. Remember the Coastal Division? They would always have some team just laying in the weeds with 3 and 4 losses that would just make it to the championship game and face the 1 loss at FSU or the one lost Clemson, there would be that one terrible team. That's the SEC East this year. It's going to be some fluke team that just crawls their way into the SEC championship game.
Yeah, and Joey, I know we joked around Saturday. No matter what happened with the Arkansas game, if Florida won, oh, they beat a bad team. If Florida lost, oh, they were overrated or whatever. Well, you know what? It kind of was true. For Florida,
it is.
This Florida team was nowhere near as good as the record showed. In a way, they were as good because, don't get me wrong, the record was a sorry 6-1. They feasted on its weak opponents. They beat the teams they were supposed to beat. Tennessee, the one average team, I guess you could say at that point. Florida got beat by 10 points, and Tennessee scored 38 straight points. But this game is a little bit of a crossroads. 2 weeks ago, South Carolina comes into town, and we don't necessarily think this would be a game. We're celebrating after a Georgia win. We know the offense was ugly. The defense, had it going. But you look at, I guess we can go to the other side of the ball just for a second. This defense, folks, I'm sorry. This defense is still elite. You can't ask this defense to be elite every week.
You're right.
It gets old. In the locker room, it gets old, believe me, when I know they can talk in the public about how it's, oh, yeah, we got our offenses back and, we do what we need to do to win the game. It gets ugly when you're asked and tasked every week to carry your team. Eventually, it's just going to break.
And it did with injuries. We saw that. Do you think Alex Anzalone breaks his arm if the defense isn't out there for 90% of the game?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely take the chances down.
Yeah, I don't think, I don't think Alex Anzalone breaks his arm. I don't think Jared Davis gets re-injured on that ankle. That was kind of that ankle re-injury was kind of a time thing. I mean, that thing was just bound to go. I mean, it's embarrassing what's happening with the defense. CeCe Jefferson now is a game time decision. It's just, this defense has done so much. And you know what? That's on the coaches. I think McElwain, going back to what you said about, I think that he truly believed in the beginning of the year, the quarterback situation was so limited that he was going to ride this defense until it broke. Last year, and you lost 3 games in a row. You should have lost to Florida Atlantic. You should have. We should have lost to Florida Atlantic. You're home by Florida State, an embarrassment. That offensive performance was close to the Arkansas performance. I mean, real close, actually. But that was with Treon Harris, so we gave, McElwain a pass for that. But should we give McElwain a pass for that? You 2 points at home against your biggest rival. That was their year to be beat. Florida State wasn't even that good that year, last year. They went and played Houston and got their butts handed to them in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl a couple weeks later. So, and then you get run off the field by Alabama. Granted, Alabama, won the national championship last year, but geez, they're much better this year. What do you think is going to happen to this year? Alabama has a way better offense this year than they did last year. So we really have to raise an eyebrow, I think, at McElwain, and I think he's panicking right now. I think he realizes now that, what he wanted to do in the beginning of the year was a bad idea with riding this defense all the way to the end. And I think now his plan is kind of base, so to say. And he's in SHIT mode. And I think that played a little part in the Del Rio injury, And, I think that's kind of right now he's kind of trying to figure out what he really needs to do because I think a small part of his mind, I think he's really concerned with his job. I really do. I think it's natural to be. I mean, we both work, if you mess up at work on a consistent basis, any normal human being would be like, oh man, there's a chance that, I'm going to get pulled in the office, and get talked to. And, you can't, you're paid as a public servant at a public university to do this job. Like you said, Dave, you were brought here to fix an offense that was broken. The hiring of Charlie Weiss broke this offense for years. And he was brought in to do a job. He made a promise to fans. He made a promise to Jeremy Foley. He said he could win with his dog at quarterback. Kind of eating those words now.
You read my mind.
And yeah, and I think now, like I said, I think he's in panic mode. offense doesn't look better over the next couple of games, I think you're going to see Doug Nussmeier get a pink slip at the end of the season, because there's got to be a fall guy.
There you go. I'm glad you said that, because there has to be a fall guy.
There's got to be a fall guy,
and I hate it.
And it was for Brent Peace. It was for Brent Peace the year before Muschamp got fired. He was the fall guy.
Yeah, and I hate it because
I think it's going to happen this year.
Yeah, you and I have seen it. We've talked. We think the plays are there for the most part. I have asked, around, and Saturday I had to tweet multiple times. It's execution. It's not the play calls. I mean, we've seen it many times. Austin Appleby at the Vanderbilt game, Antonio Callaway sitting right there on the 5-yard line, wide open, throws it out of the back of the end zone. Del Rio has many guys wide open downfield, throws the ball either late and it's short or just doesn't even have the arm strength and it's short. Folks, I'm sorry, the play calls are there. For the most part, the play calls are there. I mean, no coaching staff is perfect and no players are perfect. But for what we're seeing right now, to me, it's definitely a lot more on the players than it is the coaching staff. But like you said, there's got to be a fall guy. Maybe he gets stuck around a little bit. They showed just a little bit of something with these freshmen there. Or, even Doug Nussmeier has even, believe it or not, still been mentioned for some low-tier head coaching jobs. So maybe that kind of saved Florida in a way. Southern Miss was looking real hard at him last year. Maybe something like that along the lines happen again. But we mentioned the injuries. Let me get the full list out. You mentioned Alex Anzalone out, Mark Herndon, back up, fourth-string, fifth-string running back out, CeCe Jefferson, game-time decision, Jared Davis out, Cam Dillard out, and that injury definitely didn't look good there. So if they're asking me now, he's probably done for the year.
I do too. I heard he was writhing in pain. I heard he was screaming.
Yeah. Tyree Cleveland, from everything I'm hearing, McElwain didn't say anything about him at the press conference today. From what I heard, he's done for the field.
Yeah, he got carted off the field. He blew his leg up.
Yeah. I know they took him to the sideline, I think, and he got carted off from the sideline, I think, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so Del Rio, we mentioned, his shoulder out. Chris Thompson, who just got absolutely destroyed on the kickoff there. I don't think he'll probably be a little gun shy now, because that was definitely
part of the highlight reel for the off season.
Oh yeah, Arkansas with their end of the year awards, and I'm sure there's a video that will be shown. I'm sure there will be 50,000 angles of that hit shown there from that. So it was an ugly showing. I tweeted today. You have to look. You could say if there had been better offensive performances before today, you could attribute to this. This might has just been a bad game. But Joey, we saw this coming, and that's why. And I know fans sound spoiled sometimes when they complain about wins, but when you win ugly, and then you lose like you did this past Saturday, that's why fans complain. They see things sometimes like this coming. And we mentioned you can't ask the defense to show up time and time again and be elite every week when your offense is this bad. So to me, the reason fans complain about winning ugly sometimes is, sometimes you see games like this coming.
You can't play with fire and not expect to get burnt. McElwain's been playing with fire. He's been riding the defense into the ground with a bad offense, and it's finally burned him. And we saw it coming, like you said. It was only a matter of time before his clothing caught fire and he got, was running around screaming, on fire. It happened. And I hope, the flames got put out. And that's why I think I emphasize this quarterback decision so heavily. I think this is a make or break for him. I think Appleby, like you said, is the safe decision for him. But I truly believe that if he wants to excite the fan base, if he wants to get ready for 2017, he needs to burn a red shirt and start one of these kids and build for the future. Muschamp had vision. He started Jake Bentley when a lot of people told him no. Fans booed him when he started Jake Bentley. They did not want it, and now they are cheering him. And he's, you're either the hero or the GOAT, and he's the hero now for starting Jake Bentley and burning his red shirt. And I think this is a decision that McElwain has to make. It's 2016. Freshmen are winning championships. Freshman quarterbacks are winning Heisman's. Freshman quarterbacks aren't what they were 10 years ago. Lamar Jackson is a sophomore and is the runaway Heisman favorite, and he's going to win. He already won, in my opinion. Jalen Hurts is going to win a national championship this year. He's a true freshman. You got guys all over the place that are starting true freshmen and redshirt freshman quarterbacks and winning big football games.
Yeah, it may not look.
And I think McElwain has to. No, I know, but you know what? It's a pass. It's a pass.
Yep,
it is. I think McElwain would have more forgiveness from the fan base and from boosters, Asker Franks, than he is with Del Rio. If the offense looked the way it did on Saturday with one of those guys, he has an excuse. You don't have an excuse when you have a guy that's a second-year player. He's been in the system for 2 years. He was your guy. You named him the starter in early August, and it blew up in your face. So I think McElwain has to have some vision this week, and I really want to hear him at the end of the week or before game time announce that one of the freshmen is the starters. I don't want to see Appleby starting on Saturday. I don't. A huge mistake. I just think it would be a big mistake for McElwain. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts just because of the safe kind of play it is. But, what if Appleby comes out on Saturday and has a Vanderbilt performance? What are you going to do then, Jim? It's kind of too late then because you got 2 games left in the season and you're going to Tiger Stadium. I think if you go to Appleby on Saturday, I think you have to stick with him the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I can see maybe they start him and he's on a really short leash. Maybe that's the case too. But because you got to wonder with a true freshman, in their state of mind, did they even really think they would get any playing time this year? So how have they prepared this season? Are they prepared? But like you mentioned, and of course players are going to say this. Ahmad Fullwood said today Franks has made steps. He looks a lot better than he did. But I think he also said Trask was he looks better before the snap. He knows how to line the offense up and get them out of the right checks and stuff. So it looks like, both freshmen bring something to the table positive. But, of course, what they see in practice and what they see in a game situation would be much different. This is Gators Breakdown Podcast. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, TuneIn Radio, and SoundCloud. All those options there available for you. I mentioned South Carolina. Will Muschamp comes to the Swamp. We're about to wrap this one up. Joey, how do you see this one playing out? I don't really have a good feel for it one way or the other. Like we said, we felt much better 2 weeks ago than what we do now. And who would have thought at the game time coming up on Saturday, the way it looks now, Will Muschamp is bringing in a better-looking offense than Jim McElwain.
Yeah, I just think just on talent alone, though, Florida's obviously a much better team. Florida did open as a 15-point favorite. A lot of people were surprised by that. That's overreacting that people were surprised by that. I mean, Florida's a much better team. Even with a freshman quarterback or Appleby, and Florida's a superior team. So, I do think Florida's going to win. It's at home. The fans are going to be – a lot of people bought tickets to this game just so they could boo Muschamp. It's a sold-out game. People in the Swamp. Fans are going to be going nuts. Florida has a chance to win the SEC East on Saturday. If Kentucky beats Tennessee, which is looking more realistic now than it did a month ago,
it's over, man.
Saturday, it's over. It's over. So, Florida could be SEC East champs on Saturday. So, I do think Florida's going to win. Actually, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if Florida won by like 2 or 3 touchdowns just because to kind of McElwain to kind of flip his middle finger to everybody and kind of just, do things that he's never done before. I wouldn't be surprised if we see plays that he's never showed all season just from him being pissed off, which I'd be happy to see. I would, about after this game, whether we were right or not. I don't know if I will be. I probably won't be, but I see Florida winning. Like it's a turnaround game. I see Florida winning like 31-7.
Okay. Yep. For some reason, I don't know why. I just don't see it. For Appleby starting, all the injuries for Florida mounting up. They're playing a lot of backups. South Carolina's hot. Will Muschamp will get his guys fired up. I don't necessarily have a lot of confidence in whoever plays quarterback, whether it's Appleby or the freshman. Maybe the freshmen play good enough to light a spark and look good enough to kind of please fans, but I think somehow, some way, South Carolina may just come out with a victory here. Just the way the pieces fall, the way, hopefully the team rallies together. I thought the team was gelling pretty well. I felt the best I had felt about this team in a long time on Friday going into the Arkansas game, and I couldn't have been any more wrong the day after. So maybe it's just because of what I saw last Saturday. Bill King says it best: every week is a reset. You have a different team every week, but I just can't get that taste out of my mouth from what I saw. All the injuries mounting up for Florida, South Carolina coming in on a winning streak and hot. I'll probably pick the upset. South Carolina, 16-13, a lot of field goals.
And the reason why I think that the South Carolina can't win is because South Carolina doesn't have enough offense to come back. So if Florida gets out on a lead, they can sit on it. This is a game where Florida can pull a Tennessee game and kind of jump out to a big lead and kind of just ride the running backs and sit on it, because I think South Carolina's defense is not good enough to kind of go 3-and-out like that. I think Arkansas's defense is much better than South Carolina's defense. And don't forget, I want to put a little perspective on the South Carolina or on the Arkansas game. Obviously, Florida probably played their worst game all year, but we caught Arkansas at a horrible time.
Yep.
They were coming off a bye week, getting blown out. People were questioning Brett Bielema's job. People were questioning everything that he did with his offense this year and the running game and the lack of run defense. And he basically spent 2 weeks focusing on the Florida Gators. So don't forget, when Florida came off of a emotional win, against their rival Georgia, I mean, that's a very emotional win, whether, you want to think it or not. So slightest pass, like a 5% pass, I think Florida caught Arkansas, who's known for being November studs, at the wrong time. It's they flip a switch in November. So, if we see Arkansas rattle off, 2 and 3 wins in a row, that loss isn't going to look so bad,
Yeah, and I said before this season that Florida would lose to Arkansas. The last couple of weeks changed my mind to where I picked Florida to win that game. But of course Arkansas destroyed them. I didn't see that, but before the season, I did think that would be a tough, because I thought Georgia would be better. I thought they would pound Florida. I thought Florida would win and beat Georgia, but I thought the Nick Chubb running game and all that, and then going and playing another run heavy team in Arkansas would be just too much for the Gators. It kind of played out that way. Arkansas was much more physical than Florida, so that's another thing that has me worried. They were much more physical than Florida. So Florida's coming off that. Like I mentioned, a bunch of injuries. Another thing is, South Carolina's defense may not be impressive and all that, but it's their way to create turnovers is what scares me with who Florida puts behind center. Whether it's Appleby, whether it's the freshman, I think Will Muschamp can muster enough defense to confuse whoever is back there and get a big turnover or two. I'm really torn on this game.
No tape on a freshman. No tape. That's going to help Florida.
And Jake Bentley, this would be his first time going against an elite secondary. And Florida has eaten up true freshman Jacob Eason so far. Earlier.
Drew Lock last year.
Ago. Yep, Drew Lock.
That's what I'm saying. I just don't see South Carolina winning this game. I don't care how bad Florida's been playing. I know you picked the upset, South Carolina, but I just can't see a scenario. I was worried about the Arkansas game all year, all summer, all week, so that was a game I circled. I just can't see a scenario where South Carolina beats. I just think that the talent disparity alone will carry Florida. I'm sorry, I do. So.
Yeah, I go back and forth. You can tell I'm torn on what I'm doing. So
here
I'll go. I'll go 16-13. I'll take the easy way out. somebody.
I'll help McElwain pack his bags. I will pack up the U-Haul for him if he loses to South Carolina at home. I'm sorry.
16-13, somebody. There we
somebody.
go.
I like it. Hey, why not 6-3?
There we go. I'm taking the easy way out. I'm sorry. I'm
6-3 somebody, no? So.
All right. This was Gators Breakdown. This has been episode 19. It is in the books. Florida, South Carolina. There was a lot to talk about. I know it sounds like we're complaining, folks. That's not really what it is. I know we're just seeing what we see and voicing some frustrations a little bit. We want to see this Gator offense turn around just as much as you guys do. So Gators Breakdown, episode 19 in the books. That's Joey. I'm Dave. Catch us YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, and TuneIn Radio.